I'll tell you what, I've been waiting for this for a long time, but Tarptent has finally updated the Rainbow one-person semi-freestanding tent with a brand new Sil-Poly fabric. We're gonna go through this as a first look, first impressions of the new fabric, but I have experience with the Rainbow over the past few years in the nylon version. Now, this video is not sponsored by Tarptent. No money was exchanged and they did not ask me to make this video, but I did email them requesting a sample of this brand new tent for me to check out and share with you guys, because I do think that people are interested in getting up-to-date information on brand new offerings, and that is the purpose of what I'm trying to do with this video, is take a brand new offering, share the information so that you have that updated information for yourself to make a better educated decision on whether or not this is a good option for you for your backpacking and camping needs. Now, the Rainbow here is a semi-freestanding tent that has a very simple pitch, and that's one of the things I really enjoy about this tent design. You have this arced center pole that goes into some sleeves at the center of each end. This tent has a minimum requirement of 6 stakes for you to pitch it correctly and get a nice, tight, effective, strong pitch for winds and rain and such. And you have a second pole that goes in as a brow pole for you to increase the side-to-side internal space. But that's the initial setup and basic pitch of the Tarptent Rainbow. Now, the standout update for the 2024 Rainbow is the change in the fabric used for the outer fly. What this now features is a 20 denier Nano Ripstop Polyester that has a 3,000 millimeter hydrostatic head. It's 100% silicone coated, and that's important because that makes a huge difference in performance of this tent in really wet, rainy conditions. What you have is pretty much a sag-free single wall shelter now. And I really wanted to put this to the test in some rainy weather and such before I was out here talking about it, and I got that opportunity with a pretty intense rainstorm at my house that lasted for several hours. So I pitched the tent and I set it up in my yard, and I just let this thing take a beating from hail, from a really intense thunderstorm. And I was impressed with how well this polyester fabric handled pretty much not stretching whatsoever. And that really does make a big difference in this case, because it is a single wall, one-person tent. One-person tents by nature don't have a lot of space inside of them. We'll talk a little bit more about specs and features and size of this tent here in a minute, but that makes a huge difference in the value aspect of this tent, in my opinion. Now, I've used the Sil nylon version of this for several nights in the past, and it performs well. We all know that nylon has the downside of stretching when it gets wet. Regardless of that hydrostatic head rating that that fabric might have, it's going to sag over time. That has not been the experience so far with the polyester fabric in really getting this thing soaking wet in that intense storm and seeing it hold its shape for that period of time that it was pitched in my yard. The floor of the Rainbow continues to use a 30 denier double ripstop nylon that is also a 3,000 millimeter hydrostatic head. So you get a nice balance of a really strong floor fabric that is going to be highly abrasion resistant with a high hydrostatic head, and then the performance of that polyester silicone coated fabric for the outer fly of the tent. Now, a few other specs and features of the one-person Rainbow here are, first, the weight. This comes in at a weight of 32.05 ounces or 909 grams, which is a really nice weight for the amount of living space that you have in this tent, because this is a much larger one-person tent than a lot of other one-person tents out there on the market, namely in the floor dimensions. So you are 40 inches wide for the width of the floor, and 88 inches long. That allows for tall folks to sleep in this tent no problem, but that 40 inches really makes a difference in how livable and enjoyable this tent is. That doesn't have the tallest peak height of any tent out there at 42 inches, but it allows for enough height to sit up and for your ends to come at a pretty vertical level so that you're not getting any condensation on your sleeping gear and such inside of the tent. But that 40 inches is a big deal to me because I've got a 25-inch wide pad and I'm in a tent that is in the 30 to 36 inch range, which is very common for a one-person tent. Then I lose a lot of floor space and the livability of that tent. This is awesome for livability without increasing the weight a significant amount, and it makes it a much more enjoyable tent to spend time in as a one-person shelter. Now, it is a one-door, one-entry, single vestibule tent with the ability to roll back both of the doors to increase the amount of ventilation. It is a single wall shelter, so you have mesh on the door side, and then you've got mesh around the edges of the bathtub floor, and no door on the back side. You have a single pocket inside of the tent, and then a few other features we'll talk about once we go inside. But you also have a peak vent on each side to maximize the airflow within the tent. And here on the door side, there is no mesh blocking that airflow on the vent itself, but it does allow for you to maximize the amount of ventilation. This pitch is pretty low to the ground, which can affect the overall ventilation of this, but Tarptent has added one really cool feature to make it have the ability to still perform in the winds and rain, but maximize the opportunity for ventilation. So let's look at that real quick. So what they've done is you can zip this door, which is a watertight YKK zipper, which is nice to see. You don't have any additional flaps of fabric and such with Velcro to worry about, but there is a piece of Velcro here on the bottom of one of the door sides for you to attach this to Velcro that is here along the edge of the zipper. So I can roll that back basically and zip that down. And now I've just created a better ventilation opportunity here for airflow without compromising the storm worthiness of the tent and making it so that you're blowing a bunch of rain and water such into the inner area of the tent, which is super cool. There's also the ability for you to set some trekking poles up and create an awning style situation here. But I love the versatility of this whole door system to create the best experience possible in any kind of condition you would find yourself in. So now let's talk about living space here inside of the tent and actually get in here to show you what it's like from a peak height perspective and just ability to move side to side inside of the tent. This is one of the most livable one-person tents that I have ever spent time in. You have plenty of peak height. I am 5'9", and that 42-inch peak height is at the center. And even with me sitting here further back against kind of the head end of the tent, I still have plenty of space to move around. The back wall of the tent here also pitches out a little bit and comes out at an angle, so it's not just straight down, which increases the volume in the tent here also. When I'm laying down here in the tent, I notice that I have a lot of space between my face and the walls of the tent, which is gonna help with condensation management. This is going to be a tent that is going to get condensation. Tents get that. Doesn't matter what it is, what the design is, you're gonna have condensation. But with that being further away from your face, it's less of a concern when I sit up or when I'm moving my feet around and such in the tent, because those end walls are pretty vertical. I don't have to worry about my stuff getting soaking wet from condensation. And that 88 inches of length really does make it very roomy and enjoyable in here. But from a condensation standpoint, you do have the ability to order a liner for your the inside of the tent here to not make it a double wall tent, but for basically creating a better management situation of condensation with this being a one-person tent. Now you have at the head end and the foot end of the tent as well, the ability to actually lower or raise the end of the tent fabric to increase the amount of airflow and air movement that comes in at those ends, as well as here on this one side. So even though this pitch is low to the ground, that makes it very stormworthy and protects you from those heavy winds and rains and such. On those really nice nights that you don't need that storm protection, you can increase the amount of airflow with those various options here inside of the tent. Now, something else I find really neat about the Rainbow series of tents is the ability for you to make them freestanding with a trekking pole at the head end or the foot end. So in the situations where you find yourself not being able to drive a stake into the ground because you're in a super rocky area or it's super sandy and you just don't have that option, I can take this little plastic ring that's on the end of the stakeout loop, wrap it around the handle of my trekking pole, and then right here on the bottom of the center pole is a little clip for you to clip that onto your trekking pole, wrap it underneath, and then you'll take your other end, stake that, and you've got another plastic ring, and that's going to go over the end of your trekking pole. And then you're just going to extend that out to make sure it's good and tight. Adjust where that clip is, and then you can tension your stakeout point there, and now you've created a full freestanding option. I love the ability for that versatility with this design. Now, a feature that might sometimes get overlooked with this tent is the ability to actually strengthen the pitch of it should you find yourself in really adverse weather conditions, heavy winds, heavy rain, maybe even some snow load. This is not a four-season tent, but if you find yourself in a situation in an alpine setting where you're getting those crazy weather situations, here at the peak of the vent on each side, I have a grommet for me to take my trekking pole and go tip up into the grommet, and then I extend my trekking pole until I get that tension on it, and there's enough space here in the vent where that tip of the trekking pole is not going to push through, and then that's going to create a lot more strength and structure for the tent. And then if I just take my second trekking pole here on the back side of the tent, just right underneath the vent, then I extend my trekking pole and I create the ability for this to become a very, very strong, very stable tent that's going to handle a lot more load from heavy winds, heavy rain, potential snow load, to make this a really strong tent for pretty much any conditions that I would find myself in. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, this is not a brand new tent design for Tarptent. The Rainbow has been part of their collection for many years. I find the Rainbow to be a very versatile option. It is not the most perfect tent out there. There are other options out there that are gonna suit different types of backpacking styles better than what the Rainbow provides, but from a very livable one-person tent that also is not excessively heavy, this comes in at right at 32 ounces. That's a very respectable weight for everything that you have going on here, option-wise, feature-wise, and space-wise. So that's what I really enjoy about the Rainbow, is just that versatility aspect, and I think it's a really, really smart design that fits the needs for a lot of people. This polyester fabric update makes a huge difference in the experience with this tent over the nylon, in my opinion. I've used the polyester fabric on the Rainbow, triple Rainbow, I should say, as well as the Dipole 1DW, and I really like this fabric. It does a really nice job from a weather standpoint, and it doesn't sag, as you saw from the B-roll I shot from that storm I had the tent in. It's just a really, really good option. Thanks for watching today, guys. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please do subscribe. Hope you have an awesome day. We'll catch you on the next one. See you later.